Hello, everyone, and welcome to the sixth episode of the Scale podcast. And today we have a very special guest who is Steven from Show It Better. Hello, Steven, and welcome to this episode.
Hey, Melos, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Really excited to have a chat with another fellow YouTuber, another fellow creator, and
Mhm.
an ArcViz lover. So I'm really excited, and thanks for the invitation, man.
That's awesome. So, I would love to get started firstly by your content creation side of things because over here I do have your YouTube channel open and I can see that your first video, which is at least public, is from 6 years ago. And I'm just wondering what went through your mind when you first started YouTube. Do you think that this would ever become a career?
I don't know. It was a very weird time because at that time I just wanted to make a YouTube channel of whatever. So I didn't have
Mhm.
any specific plans to be like an ArcViz, uh, content creator that was super specialized in the field. I just wanted to make YouTube. YouTube was like around 2016. It was a time where everyone was starting to see like the revenue coming in from YouTube. So I was like,
Yeah.
what? You can make videos, you can make money from YouTube. And I've always been a fan of YouTube. I learned that's the way I learned to play guitar. That's the way I
Mhm.
learned to do a
100%.
ton of things. So when I was exiting college and starting my first years of school in of of
Mhm.
architecture employee, there was a time where I was unemployed and I was like, what should I do? I have no money, but I have
Mhm.
time. I was like living with my parents,
Mhm.
and I was like, let's fuck it. Let's just create a YouTube channel and
Mhm.
see where it goes from there. I was really passionate about architecture representation in that time, but I was really passionate about a ton of things as well. So I created, I think, like two or three YouTube channels about different things.
Mhm.
But this one was the one that took off, and uh,
Oh.
and I started uploading tutorials, just like time lapse tutorials about doing
Mhm.
anything. And like I don't know, like four
Yeah.
months later, 5 months later, I started to see that there were a lot of people interested in the same things, and
Mhm.
that from there on, I was like, let's just do this.
Mhm. And then, if on that time, do you remember if there were any like other architecture content creation? Because honestly, it's not a super popular type of path to follow for architects or people that like architecture in general.
No, it's a very particular, and it's a very particular path that it's very weird to find someone else. Like that's why when I found Oliver,
Hmm.
it was super interesting because like in the world there's so few of us,
Yeah.
and it's cool to see that more and more people are jumping in,
Hmm.
but they're doing their own stuff right now. But at that time when I was starting out, there was Alex Hographer, which was more dedicated to the blog
Yeah.
than to the YouTube channel, but he still
Hmm.
uploaded YouTube videos. And for me, that was like an idol. And then there
Hmm.
were other YouTubers that were not specifically geared towards architecture, but they had really cool ways of doing tutorial based videos, which I really admired. And then there were
Hmm.
like obviously the classics of YouTube, which Casey Neistat and all these
Yeah.
guys, was super inspiring as well.
Yeah. 100%.
But yeah, but like through time, more people have jumped, like more architecture related uh, people have jumped into the YouTube thing. And it's
Hmm.
not that much. Like if you compare it with Instagram, a lot of people
Yeah.
have created Instagram pages and
Hmm.
they've blown up, and you see more and more every day, but not a lot of people want to start editing videos, creating videos, putting
Yeah.
themselves out there.
100%.
So it's still something challenging to see uh, when someone wants to dedicate themselves or their career to
Hmm.
YouTube and put videos out consistently.
Hmm.
That's what I think. I respect it a lot. Like what you're doing right now, what Oliver's doing, what other YouTubers like 30 by 40, like from Eric.
Well,
Yeah,
he's on
there's
a whole
there's a ton
different
right now.
level,
No,
though.
yeah, no. Eric is just geared towards a more broader audience. So
Yeah, he's like Netflix level videography. So yeah,
I
hundred
know, I
percent.
know, I know. One
It's
of these
insane.
days he could appear on Netflix. You never know.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
like Dammy Lee also is also another
yeah.
one that I've talked with just a
Yeah,
few months ago, and
hundred
she's taken
percent.
off, and she's just geared her own niche within architecture. which I think is
I
incredible.
think
I love her
it's
videos.
more focused towards architecture students, right? Or their content, right? Some.
Well, to me, it's just geared towards architects and non-architects in general, because she always
Mhm.
talks about like uh,
Yeah.
architecture in movies, like many different topics,
Mm,
but more of
yeah.
of her life as an architect. So I think it's a really
Yeah. Yeah.
cool
100%.
way of approaching it too.
100%. Yeah. And honestly, like one of the things that always fascinates me is a lot of creators tell the stories of when they quit their job or other stuff they were doing and they went full time on YouTube. Right now, you're a full time on content creation, right? Most, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
hmm
Yeah, it became full time. I think about 3 years ago. I think
hmm
this is 2023. No, maybe 3 to 4 years ago. No,
hmm
let's say 3 years ago, like
yeah,
full time, because I started creating videos on YouTube, but obviously it wasn't uh, bringing in so much revenue that I could support myself and
hmm
stuff. So I had to have side jobs, or like the normal jobs that I have, like at
hmm
architecture offices. And when the pandemic hit, I was really not interested in working from home for an architectural office. It was just
hmm
like not my type of process. I would always like to be inside of the office
yeah,
and in an architecture space. And I was like, let's just dedicate myself to YouTube completely, and I've
yeah,
been there ever since. So
100%. I
it's
mean,
worked out.
yeah, yeah. Obviously, I mean, I've seen a lot of the courses and like the packs and all that, and a lot of people find those helpful, which in turn also gave you kind of more freedom in terms of what path you chose for architecture. But do you sometimes miss the traditional path of architecture? Is that something that you feel like you have a hole in the career path that you have, and you kind of have to fill that?
I don't know, not really. This is
Hmm
a very existential question and topic, and still, but I love to think about, how what we're doing right now, what you're doing, what Oliver's doing, what all of us are doing, is just creating a new branch for architects that eventually, maybe I don't know how many years, but in the
hmm
future, it'll be seen like, okay, so this is like a normal branch for architects.
hmm
Uh, that it's just like going into urban design, going into
Mm,
teaching in university, going into architecture design, whatever.
yeah.
But it's kind of scary because no one's here with us, or we haven't seen an example of who's done it before in the architecture world. So we have to set that example. So
100%.
although it seems tempting to think, for me, although it seems tempting to think like my only, or like my validation as an architect can come from architecture design, or stereotypical architecture roles.
Mm,
I recently have started to think that we're creating a new branch. We're creating a new ways of being an architect, of communicating what an architect is, and we just have to take the risk. That's it,
mm,
basically it.
100%. I mean, yeah, I definitely agree with you. And the part that this kind of field is not very tested yet is kind of it's scary and it kind of can make you anxious. And the other thing is, like architecture in general as a field adapts very slowly to trends, or at least that's what I believe. And then there's a lot of diehard architects that are very like, if you present yourself as a content creator, they basically don't take you as serious. I'm not sure if you've experienced that as well, but I think with new generation and obviously social media and all of this, I believe this will definitely change in the future. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Um,
Yeah, when I hear or maybe feel those type of attitudes, I completely understand it. I mean, it's new territory. It's not proven. Something I think has to, we have to be here for at least 10 years or more to say like,
mm,
okay, so this is something much more established. But it's a process. So
yeah.
I understand their point of view, but I think my role as the person that I'm trying to be is to just make it as best as possible, as consistent as possible, and provide
Mm.
the most value I can within the architecture community. And I think maybe in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, that will come afloat, and people will see
Mm.
all the value that's been put in by all of us.
100%. I mean, even e-learning skyrocketing right now. Who knows? There might be like an online learning platform for architects in the future that will just like be much cheaper than the traditional university path, and might be much better. Which I do want to stop a little bit and talk about this. And how much do you think traditional university or this educational formal educational path is worth it as an architect? And do you think there's any better alternatives out there?
Uh, I don't know. I don't know because I can't. I can't, like completely disregard university because
Mhm,
there's something still within the the university culture of architects and architecture studios and whatnot that is important for architects. But there is obviously a lack of education within the the traditional
mhm,
architecture
yeah.
educational path. So, you know, personally for me, since I was in school and with all the people that I graduated with people from other parts with other countries, that have had the same problems, I always had, there was a lack uh, of of teaching how to communicate, how to represent better your ideas, how to
Mhm,
communicate visually. Like the importance of that was uh, was not emphasized as much as you see it nowadays. That with Instagram, with YouTube, with all that, students can realize that this is a very important part of their project. But you
mhm,
know, when I was graduating, it was just like focus on the inner design, and the way you communicate it doesn't really matter. So
mhm,
I think there's a lot of holes and gaps within the traditional architecture education,
mhm,
but right now at this moment, I don't think it's. I think they're complementary. I think the contemporary student goes with a little bit of both. They know that they have to go to architecture school to get the actual
mhm,
degree, but they
100%.
also know that they have to go to YouTube, go to blogs, go to the internet, go wherever their teacher doesn't show them. They have to do it
Yeah.
to complement their education. Hopefully, in the future, what we're doing becomes much more important at a level where university thinks that they either have to incorporate the same kind of educational I don't know, the way of educating has to be more or less similar to what we're doing in the
Mhm,
way that it's consistent, that in the way that it's synthesized, that it's easy to understand, that it's not like take 10 books and try to read them and try to see what point
mhm.
of
Yeah,
perspective you
100%.
need, but just
100%.
how to actually do certain things.
Yeah.
So I think. mm right now we need a little bit of both. We can't disregard any of them,
Yeah.
but in the future, hopefully, we can get much more importance on it.
The thing is, I always say about university, one of the most, like, the biggest upside, at least for me, was kind of networking and meeting other people that kind of have similar goals as you. I think that is very powerful. However, I do believe that it depends on what kind of university you go anyway, because it differs a lot in terms of quality. But
Of course, yeah.
at least in the environment that I'm in right now here, there's not much things that university can teach you that you can all learn on the internet. But the thing is, you will not still be acknowledged by the mainstream kind of the bureaucratic path in terms of getting your license and all of that. So you still will need university in order to be able to design anything. But I mean, it is what it is. But I'm sure it will be more liberated sooner or later.
Yeah, and I think also, like, as a student, like if when I was a student, I knew that I wanted to become an architecture visualizer or specialize in that field.
Hmm.
I think maybe what I was taught in university would not be as important as what I learned via internet.
Hmm.
But the thing is, we don't know what we want to be when we're in university. We
Yeah,
know what we want to be when we're like 5 years after we graduate, and we're still trying
100%.
to figure it out, sometimes. So
Hmm.
it's kind of difficult to know what we need from the university or what we need from the internet, what we need from different sources until we're actually put out there, outside of the university realm, and be like, all right, so what am I really interested in? And it's in that moment where you're like, okay, so maybe I need to study a master's, or maybe I need
Hmm.
to just focus on blogs and internet and stuff. So it's kind of
Yeah,
difficult to comprehend in that time.
yeah, 100%. I definitely see your point. I myself never really was. I still am not 100% convinced that I always want to be like a visualizer. It's a good segue for me to be from a visualizer to then move on to design later on when I feel like I do have all the necessary tools. But it also was very appealing and interesting to me when I first started out that wow, you can make an image that looks like real life from a computer. Like this was like the astonishing thing that kind of lured me into starting 3D rendering. But I do want to ask you, what was the first software that you kind of started out with when you were trying to do architectural visualizations?
The first software, and the one that I have had in my hand since then, is Photoshop. I think Photoshop has been, you know, my first love, and it
Mm-hmm.
still remains to be my first love because there's been a lot of programs. There's been V-Ray. There's been
Mm-hmm.
all of these new real time rendering engines.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, Photoshop was the program that I could always imagine that I can do anything. Like if I
Yeah.
can't model it, if I can't do it, and in the rendering process, if I can't texture it, if I can't understand it, Photoshop, I can always fix it in Photoshop, and that's the way I
Mm-hmm.
learned, or I had the passion for visualization,
Mm-hmm.
and until this day, I always think that Photoshop is the solution for many of your problems. So for me, Photoshop is one of the top tier programs that you can learn, and then you can learn the rest. But for now, Photoshop.
100%. And then, what do you think of the new integration with the Photoshop beta with generative fill AI tool? How do you think that is changing the way that architects will work with Photoshop?
I think it's awesome. I mean, I've been trying it
Mm,
out. I've been using it in my day to day for small things and for also like bigger things. It's not perfect, obviously. If it
mhm.
was perfect, it would be kind of boring because then what do you actually do? You just
Yeah.
type in something and that's it. But trying to discover it, trying to see, okay, how can I learn this new tool and adapt it to my workflow? I think it's really exciting. I mean,
Hmm.
each new update that comes out, and specifically the ones with Photoshop, the ones that are already integrated into your workflow, I think are very exciting. Like I'm waiting for the day until uh, uh, Enscape, V-Ray, Lumion comes out. Okay, so we have we have an AI integration into our
Hmm.
software. I mean, that's what I think we're all waiting for because they're kind of late to
I
the show,
think
I
I
guess.
think I think they're already starting to plan this out. I think they're doing some research teams, but it's definitely going to be very interesting. And I'm not sure how much important our role is going to be by then, or at least it's kind of going to be a bit, um, in my opinion, it's not going to be as not as important, but is not going to be looked at as valuable in terms of other architects because at the end of the day, we're offering these services to other architects. But I do want to know what your opinion is on this because honestly, I do see that in at least 5 years, there's going to be integrated AI software into like modeling software, like already in Revit, in ArchiCAD, and all of that. And then architects are going to be able to create realistic renders with 3 or 4 words. How do you think we are going to stand in this area?
Honestly, I'm super excited. I'm one of
Mm-hmm.
the like optimists in general of
Mm-hmm.
this whole wave that's coming with AI. It's true that many people that maybe let's say within the visualization world
Mm-hmm.
will be left out of jobs.
Yeah.
But the way I see it is that many people will be challenged to to provide something much better or some added additional value to
Mm-hmm.
what just a person that can type in a prompt can do. So, when I think of people or offices like Mir, or when I think of
Yeah.
offices like Brick Visual, I think
Yeah.
they're
Nah.
not really scared about the issue because they know
We're
that
not scared either, right? Because yeah, well,
not
there's
no no
nothing to.
not
Yeah.
not really because I
Mm-hmm.
know that, like, for example, their added value is their eyes. They could have only watercolors, they could have the best tools, the best AI
Mm-hmm.
tools, but those tools aren't going to handle themselves. Like,
Yeah.
the moment they decide what to do with that is what the client is paying for. From my point of view, I could teach you. I could create a video on Enscape, I could create a video on V-Ray, or I could create a video on Midjourney. But I think my value as an architect is my point of view, how I describe it,
Hmm.
how I see it, how I can apply it to different tools. So
Yeah.
I don't think I don't honestly think that we should be really pessimistic
Oh.
about this. I mean, we should just be like trying to ask ourselves, okay, so how can I learn this, and how can I add value on top of this? So
Hmm.
so the clients still think like, all right, so maybe as a client I could do this by myself,
Hmm.
but this guy is just doing it so much better. Why
Yeah.
don't I just give it to him? So
100%. I
honestly,
mean,
I think it's very cool.
yeah, I definitely agree with you. It's just the thing is, I do not mean it with like a scared mindset. I just think that we should be ready to adapt because things are changing and they might change more rapidly than what we're seeing right now. We have not seen a move, as we said, from like chaos or any of these kind of big companies. But when we do see a move from that side, it's going to be very, very interesting, at least in my opinion. But
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I
I,
mean,
I
I'm excited about the when there are prompt engineers inside of architecture visualization that I know. Like for example, Brick Visual is also is
Mhm,
already hiring prompt engineers. Is already have like open positions from prompt engineers, which I think is
mhm.
just another job that architects can
Yeah,
start
yeah.
to look into. You know.
And how, like, what exactly is the role of a prompt engineer? Is it like the AI artist thing or is it like other kind of
I
direction?
think the way I see it is at the moment, because obviously this is changing
Hmm.
every 6 months, and that role of that person is also changing. But at this moment, I think the role of a prompt engineer is trying to understand how language can form images and how images can be decomposed into language.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
sometimes we only think of when we're trying to describe our images, we only think of 3 or 5 words. Okay, so this is amazing. This is an amazing
Hmm.
uh, dusk image that
Yeah.
is seen from from outside, exterior, whatever. But when you think of it from the point of view of a prompt engineer, it's trying to decompose the language, trying to deconstruct it and say, all
Hmm.
right, so what are the ways that I can try to describe this image as precisely as possible, so the AI can understand different ways of creating
Hmm.
different variations.
Yeah.
So I think that can give us, that's a good tool for us to understand our own images. Like when I put my render that I created in V-Ray into Midjourney, and I put the slash describe option,
Hmm.
Midjourney gives me a set of words that they understand that image through, and those words can help me understand how I can describe my architectural project to a client. So I had
Hmm.
not thought of, I don't know, maybe describing it as, I don't know, contemporary style, or insert
Yeah.
whatever words you want here. But that tool has given me different words with which I can communicate better my architectural ideas.
Hmm. Yeah, it's almost like you're um, like throwing adjectives to the project, and then AI is taking that and applying it. And I'm also I think from an office in Germany, I just heard a few weeks back that they're hiring. They not calling them prompt engineers. I think they're more like AI artists, which I don't think is the most appropriate. I think prompt engineer sounds much more in tune with what they're actually
Yeah,
doing, and they kind of use them more for inspiration in terms of when they want to apply for um, like architectural competition and stuff like that, which I think is
yeah.
very, very interesting. And soon a lot of these architecture firms are going to have in-house prompt engineers, which I'm not sure if I was living under a rock, but I haven't heard that term yet, but I really like that. I think it's appropriate for their
Yeah, no,
role.
it's
So,
much more. I
yeah.
mean, calling yourself an artist, uh, you know, and AI artist, architecture artist, whatever, is
Mhm.
is uh is something to think about. And maybe you
Over
shouldn't call yourself
exaggeration.
an artist just so freely. So I
Yeah.
think prompt engineer is much more precise.
100%. 100%. And one thing that I'm also very curious on, which might not be the perfect segue for this, but I do see that you post a lot of content for many different subjects, and you're not super niche down on software as much as I am, like in terms of Enscape. And I always like admire that in your content because no matter what kind of software you use or whatever kind of tutorial you do, it always does well, and you have kind of a mix in the audience in terms of that. Was that like deliberate decision for you, or you just decided that you want to put as much content in terms of what you're actually using in your day-to-day life?
Well, I think there. in YouTube, in the
Mm-hmm.
whole content creation space in general,
Mm-hmm.
there are a ton of people that have incredible talent for certain programs, incredible talent to deconstruct and analyze processes within programs, and they're very technical, and I admire that a lot. And from the
Mm-hmm.
start, I knew that I wasn't that type of person because you know those people are just very specialized. Like for example, when I think of the Balkan Architect, when I think of Nuno Silva, there are
Mm-hmm.
people that are very good at what they do because they try to specialize in
Mm-hmm.
certain types of programs. Me personally, I've always been like on one side, I've always been passionate about many things around architecture, but also many things around the visual communication of architecture, and that does not mean that I'm all only interested in certain programs or certain styles or certain ways of communication. Like I honestly
Mm-hmm.
am interested about all of it. And on
Mm-hmm.
the other side, I know that if I try to become as technical as my colleagues, I won't get there completely, and I won't be as good and as detailed as they
Mm-hmm.
are because it's just not my passion fully. So from the start, I've always wanted to show, like, I think this is the channels that we create, the platforms that we create, the
Mm-hmm.
pages, they're like also a reflection of what you're interested in, a reflection of your
Yeah.
personality, not only what can give you more money or what can get you more views, but like what is the reflection of your interest, your personal interest. That's why
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so important to see the difference between upstairs and show up better. Even though we're like very similar within very
Mm-hmm.
similar niches, we communicate our ideas and interests in very different ways. And personally, I am interested into architecture, lifestyle. I'm interested into architecture in general and visual communication, graphic design. So I try not to niche down on any of those specifically, but just try
Mm-hmm.
to, talk about all of them because that's what I'm like in my day to day interested in.
100%. And then also, like with the variety of content that you put out, do you sometimes feel that you expect a video to do much better than it actually does, or vice versa? For example, um, it's interesting, at least for me, I would never think to do like a digital maquette video because I wouldn't think that it would be something of interest for people. And that's obviously, I'm completely wrong with that because I'm seeing here that it almost has 100,000 views in just 6 months. But do you have like a certain process on how you choose and what like your expectations are for content creation?
Mm, I think unconsciously I do, but
Mm-hmm.
if I was to like tell you specifically, I don't think I could describe it very well. It's a
Mm-hmm.
mix of like when I try to create a video, I try to see if I'm really interested in creating it, like if it's something that I'm really interested
Mm-hmm.
in, and it's something that maybe I don't know, maybe at least 1,000 people would be interested in. And if it meets that criteria, then if it doesn't, then I publish it, I create it, and if it doesn't have like
Mm-hmm.
500,000 views, it's going to be okay with me because
Yeah.
I was really interested in doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some times where when I create a video, I spend 2 weeks, 3 weeks creating it. It doesn't perform well. I really like the result, and I just have to I just have to cope with it and be like, all
Yeah.
right, so let's just hope it performs well.
Mm-hmm.
A year from now, 2 years from now, sometimes that happens. Sometimes the video is just stale completely, and a
Mm-hmm.
year later, like YouTube pops it out again.
Yeah.
And sometimes a video that I didn't really like, just goes off or like blows off uh, much more than
Yeah.
videos I really like. So that
100%.
doesn't that process really doesn't depend on me 100%. I know that there's a thing of algorithm, a thing of what are people interested in at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just trying to make the videos that I think I would like to see most at that certain time. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes
100%.
sometimes it coincides, sometimes it doesn't. It's just something that you have to learn and try to navigate.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, it definitely has worked for you. And I always try to pick up things on what you do. And to be honest with you, even when I first started out, I will always look at your thumbnails and try to um, pick out things on why you kind of used that, why you didn't use it. And you, Oliver, and a lot of other big YouTubers. And I always find it fascinating because obviously it's a very visual field. And thumbnails and all of this stuff plays a big part into that. But um, we do have a lot of the audience that will be watching this, or we do have a lot of the audience from both of our channels that are architecture students. And I do believe that one of the biggest struggles that I always hear from architecture students who are also interested in starting out architectural visualization services and all of that is to kind of get clients, or how can architects kind of make a living while they are in architecture school. I know that this is kind of more on a business side of things in terms of questions, but I do believe that this is not spoken enough online, and sometimes architects are most focused on just getting better at the craft, which is very useful. But I do believe that there's a lot more topics to cover in terms of how can students get clients in terms of freelancing and make a living out of this. So, what would you say to architecture students in this regard?
I would say, that I think the most important thing is trying out as many things as possible and as fast as possible, because
Yeah.
architecture school is the only place where you have that liberty of
Hmm.
actually like doing anything, uh, trying anything within architecture. And if it doesn't succeed, then 6 months later you can try to do another thing, and trying to not like recognize not recognize if you like it or not because of how many clients you get, but
Hmm.
much more of how did you feel when you're creating it. So for example, when I started working, um, in architecture, since I was
Hmm.
in like fifth semester of architecture school. So
Hmm.
since fifth semesters, like since half my career, my architecture
Yeah.
undergraduate degree, I had the opportunity to work on competitions, work on construction details, design bathrooms, go to construction sites, try
Hmm.
to do all of that before I graduated. And by the time I graduated, I knew what I really didn't really like. So I knew I didn't
Hmm.
like to be in construction sites. I knew I didn't like very bossy people or like very corporate
Yeah.
environments. I wasn't into that as well as much as other partners were, which was completely
Hmm.
fine for them. And I knew that when I was creating an image for myself, where I charged even like $10 in my school to help with this other guy's thesis, I knew that I was doing something exciting. It excited me as well. So
Hmm.
identifying those little triggers helped me when I graduated. Eventually, it helped me to understand. Okay, so I think I'm really good at this, and I think I could go down this path, and then just like let whatever happens, like eventually just
Yeah.
happen. So you know,
Hmm.
back to the whole YouTube as a career thing. I mean, obviously, when I graduated, or when I was thinking about graduating, I never thought of like this being a career for me. And
Hmm.
I don't know where this career is going to take me. I don't know if this is like a stepping stone for some other thing that is going to happen in the future.
Hmm.
But I'm just like going through the river, because I know that that's what I'm good at the moment. I have like validation from my peers that this is something that is good. And I think recognizing that is crucial. Like, what do you
Yeah.
think you're good at? If clients are paying you, then maybe you're good at it. You're better at it than your peers.
Hmm.
So trying to identify that and trying to test it out as much as possible and as fast as possible, I think is what you should do.
Hmm.
Better
100%.
than anything.
I think I want to stop a little bit in this speed part, because honestly, once I implemented this in kind of the way I work, speed is super crucial, at least micro speed, in the sense that the
Yeah,
sooner you get things done, the faster you're going to get feedback, and the faster you're going to be able to implement it and then move forward and double down on the things that work. And
it's true.
if there's one thing that I would like anyone from the podcast to take and apply, I think that speed and being fast in terms of applying getting stuff done as quick as possible is crucial, at least from what has worked for me. But uh, you certainly didn't think that you'd be able to visit and interview someone in the Björk Ingles group um, office when you started YouTube. And honestly, I watched both of your videos, yours and Oliver, and I was inspired by that, and probably a lot of other people were. Can you take me through the
Thanks,
process
man.
of what it felt like to go in there and kind of have a full experience as a guest in the big group office?
No, it just felt it was so exciting. Honestly, when I think about it, when I watch the videos, when I think about that time, it was also very exciting because um, this is not something like, in case anyone doesn't know, this is not something that we had planned. We
Mhm.
just wanted to go to New York, uh, create some content together with Oliver, but we never had the specific contact or meeting to go to the office, or we haven't
Mhm.
had this planned. It was just like 2 hours before it actually happened that we
Mhm.
got the notification that, hey, if you guys want to go, you guys can go. Just pass over by their
Mhm.
office and just say hi and try to record if possible. So
Mhm.
it was very spontaneous. It was very exciting to see how the team at Big received us, because they were
Mhm.
very friendly. It's also interesting to see how these type of offices work in real life. What type of
Mhm.
groups they have, how they have their actual studio space designed, what projects they're actually working on, and how they actually treat the guests that go over there. So it was just a very exciting process. And after that, we were just like, this is we felt good. What we were talking about before, like after we
Mhm.
did it, we were like, we felt good doing it. We felt good editing the video. We felt good like with the response that we were getting. And it's something that we think that should be done more often. Like people
Mhm.
should know what offices look like behind the scenes. Like if they want to work there, what what is actually happening in the office. So maybe this whole offices tour thing, kind of things, is something that we can take on to the future and try to add it to our
100%.
content ideas for our channels,
100%.
because it's something that we love doing. It wasn't like difficult for us to do,
Mhm.
and people were also interested in. So it's, you know, yeah,
Mhm.
it was very exciting.
I mean, just as you were talking about this, I was just imagining how cool it would be if any one of these like super big architects would just take someone to record them every day, and they would do daily vlogs when they would go to work. And I think that would highly contribute to even their brand, but a lot for us admirers of architecture. And I think there's a huge, huge gap to fill in terms of content creation in the architecture space, which I think is going to be filled in future. So one other thing that I was very surprised is that they do use Enscape at their office as one of the tools to visualize very quickly. And I think I heard someone else mention that when you two were interviewing someone from the big office a while back, you and Oliver, it was an online call or something like that. And I'm very fascinated by that because obviously you've done a lot of Enscape content as well, and obviously my whole channel is based around Enscape. And anytime I don't have Enscape in the title, I get zero clicks. But
Yeah.
can you just take everyone through um, how they explain the process of why they use Enscape and why is it a tool of their choice into their day-to-day workflow?
From what I've heard,
Mm-hmm.
from the people I've talked with, and not only from their office, but from also other big important
Mm-hmm.
offices, the most important thing about Enscape is how fast it is, and the ratio of how fast and how high quality results it can produce.
Yeah.
Sometimes speed is not the only variable, but it has to have
Mm-hmm.
speed, and it also has to be like
Mm-hmm.
relatively good looking.
Mm-hmm.
So if you try to compare all the programs that we have at our hand at the moment, and try to compare those two variables, how fast it is and how good it looks, Enscape
Yeah.
is the one that just matches up perfectly. It's very fast to do. It
100%.
doesn't require like a supercomputer for you to create good
Yeah.
visuals, and it's supporting animations, it's supporting renders. Sometimes it honestly takes less than a minute. I don't want to sound like too branded here, because I
Y-
love creating content on Lumion, on D5, on V-Ray. Like
Yeah.
honestly, every software company that tries to do something different for the visualization realm, I think it's you have to respect that, and they
Mm-hmm.
they all add value in different ways. And I would not say that I prefer one over the other, but when you try to analyze it from an office like Big, which has to
Mm-hmm.
which has a ton of projects on their hand, and has to maybe talk with clients every day and update them and they have to make those updates very quickly.
Mhm.
Enscape is the obvious tool because it's not hard to do. It's
Yeah.
all just built in, and you just click on render. That's it.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely agree with you on that one. And then the other big thing that you mentioned as well, especially for people that are watching this, is that you don't even have to invest in a very expensive computer to use Enscape. Like the threshold to use it is very low. And from what I've heard is that when Enscape was first being developed, the whole point was if a computer was able to run Revit or SketchUp, it would be able to run Enscape as well. And I think that is very, very fascinating.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's that's something that other like the competition
Mhm.
has to somehow deal with it, or I've seen that they're trying to maybe not compare themselves with it, but just add other things, like add higher quality visuals, so which I think is
Mhm.
also very respectable, and it just
Mhm.
differentiates different
Yeah.
intentions when you want to create your image. There's a lot
Mhm.
of good programs right now, but I think Enscape has some
Yeah.
leverage within that field.
100%. Because a while, like a few months back, I did a video where I rated every single rendering software. I mean, the most like obvious ones. And of course, it was going to be a bit biased because I do like Enscape. And a lot of people were commenting like I undervalue Twinmotion, this and that. And the thing is, it's just because I do not see the upside in terms of real time rendering engines because Enscape is just faster and the quality is somewhere around the same level. So yeah, I mean that's how I kind of see it.
Yeah, and
But
I don't see this tier list after AI, just
mhm,
takes over these programs. Which one can use it better? Like if eventually, maybe Lumion uses a better AI plugin than Enscape. I don't know. I'm
mhm.
talking, bullshit right here, but if it does, then maybe Lumion will be the best program. You
I
never know.
think Chaos Group is almost going to be overpowered in this sense right now because they're really expanding. At least that's kind of my prediction. They're going. I believe they're going to become like a monopoly in this in this direction.
It's
But it's
true.
very interesting because obviously they kind of going to mix in both Enscape and V-Ray and then use them for um, different kind of directions. So most offices are going to end up using at least one chaos software. So it's very, very interesting. But yeah, I mean, something else that I want to cover as well is we talked quite a bit in terms of content creation, and I just want to touch on. There's probably a lot of people that are thinking to start a career in terms of content creation in architecture, and I believe that one of the biggest upsides is that there's a lot of topics that are untapped yet in this direction, and they can kind of take up an audience. But what would kind of be your advice on people that are watching it that are thinking in terms of content creation with architecture? Or let's
Well,
just put it this way. Let's say that I was just starting out. What kind of advice would you give to me in that sense? Which
no,
I'm
you're
also
not
kind of
starting out,
almost
but no,
starting out.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. I think it's just such an exciting topic.
Mhm,
Whenever I'm like that really intense friend and colleague that always tries to make everyone go onto YouTube and create their channels. Like I
mhm.
have a ton of friends that are like, there's just living their life. Like you should create a YouTube channel about it.
The
So
same.
I,
And
so I'm,
I have like three of my friends that have created a YouTube channel only
yeah.
this year. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always pushing for everyone to create content, not because it's the trendy thing to do,
Mhm,
but because it's a really good way to express and like analyze yourself, and try to understand what you're good at, what you like, what you don't,
it's
and
like a
obviously,
self-aware journey. Yeah.
yeah, it's to be self aware, and like it's
Mhm,
a fast path to also like understand what you're good at, what you're not, and get clients about it. So,
mhm,
for example, if like you want to create content, you're an architect, but you have no idea on what to create it, then
mhm,
just start doing whatever is most passionate to you. Like if you
mhm,
like to create architecture tutorials, create them. Eventually, you'll find that either you'll get really bored. You're like, seriously, I have to create another tutorial now on this
mhm,
program. This is kind of boring. Then that will be your sign to just switch to maybe creating
mhm.
vlogs, or switch to creating
Yeah.
book reviews, or switch to going on construction sites and
Hmm.
trying to deconstruct how a column is built. Whatever you want.
Yeah.
There's so, like as you said, there's so many things within the architecture content creation world that have not been tapped into yet. That
Hmm.
there's a ton of opportunities, and it's just waiting for people to actually do them in the best way possible. I mean, like, some
Hmm.
people can actually try to do them, but maybe they haven't found the right medium yet. Maybe their medium is not
Yeah.
YouTube, but Instagram, or maybe it's not Instagram, but blogs, or
Blogging.
just
Yeah.
written content. There are so many ways
100%.
of expressing your ideas, of actually trying to
Hmm.
like show what you're doing parallel to what you're actually doing, that can just help. It's like a meta skill that can actually help you in your
Hmm.
design, uh, in your architecture career. So
Hmm.
it's
It's
like
like an investment.
it's
Yeah.
like photography, like learning a new language, like learning something. Even
Hmm.
if you're not doing it for the views, for the followers, you're doing it for yourself. Like, now I know how to create audiovisual content. I know how to edit a video. I know how to use After
Hmm.
Effects. I know how to talk to a camera. If all this ends tomorrow, I have a set of skills within my hand that can
Yeah.
help me with it, like
100%.
being an architect. And that's how you have to think about it. Like, what things should I learn that can add to my skills as an architect, and
Hmm.
what would I like to add to it? So
Hmm.
I my initial like base advice is like start doing it again as fast as possible, so you can know what
Hmm.
you're good at and what you like the most,
Yeah.
and be consistent.
Another thing that I really love about like content creation on YouTube is that you have a lot of steps to recreate that is documented. Not maybe not 100%, but let's say I always imagine myself after 10 years, because honestly, I do not plan on stopping this. Maybe I change my mind later on, but I do not plan on stopping this. Just looking back and kind of seeing like the journey documented, and that is kind of a very big upside to me. But one thing that I do want to also uh, pick your brain on is I do see a lot of posts on Instagram that you put about keeping a balance and not having your whole life focused like architecture. Your whole life shouldn't be architecture centric in that sense, because a lot of people do put a lot of hours into architecture and then they maybe experience burnout and all of that. But I really want to know, what kind of routine do you actually have in your day-to-day life in Colombia?
Um, well, that's a good question. I'm super glad you asked about it, because it's
Hmm.
not always work. And when I started creating YouTube, when I started as an architect 5, 6, 7 years ago,
Hmm.
I was ingrained with the mentality of work as much as you can. If someone asks you to work 2 extra hours, 3 extra hours, do it, because maybe that can lead you to a bigger opportunity
Hmm.
in the future, because that your boss will have you good eyes, whatever. And then when I transformed into YouTube, uh, that I kept that process with me, like that ingrained process of
Hmm.
trying to work as much as possible, trying to maybe stay up late until I can put out as many videos as possible. And then eventually, as it always happens, there's comes a time when you don't feel as well as you think you should feel for your age. There's time when you think you're not as close to your family. You should have more
Yeah.
hobbies. You're kind of always stressed, and that's where I had to say, all right, so this is not something to be taken lightly. You just really have to take some rest. You just really have to go
Hmm.
outside. So right now, like for the past three years, uh, I usually wake up. I usually like have around 8 to 9 hours of sleep. So
Hmm.
I value sleep as much as possible. Then I try to get some work done until 12. Then I try to go to the gym. Like, after this, I'm going to the gym for about 2 hours.
Hmm.
Then I come back home, have some lunch. I have a dog, so it just makes me go outside at least for
Hmm.
30 minutes each day to just
Yeah.
go out, socialize with people, be with my dog. And I have like another work session in the afternoon. And then I have like a reading session when I before I go to sleep. And sorry.
Yeah. No worries.
And that's it. And in
Hmm.
the week, I also have, like, I always respect Monday to Friday kind of thing. So when Saturday comes and Sunday comes, I try not to think
Mm,
about work at all. So I usually don't post like anything on Instagram. Or like if you usually write to me on Saturday, Sunday, or like even after
mm,
hours, I honestly don't check it because it's not like I'm have tried to think about it like, this is not my work hours, so I'm not going to work
mm,
on this time.
100%.
And I try to do different activities. I try to go to the pool. I try to play music. I have a ton of different hobbies. And one of the first things that you might think of when you go out of architecture school and not be ingrained into architect 100% of your time is like, okay, so I'm not going to make as much money, I'm not going to have as much opportunities, I'm not going to uh, be the best architect that I can be. But I think the opposite totally happens once you start, just trying to take time for yourself, uh,
Mm,
trying to get more hobbies, learn more things. I think more opportunities can start to open up. So,
yeah,
like right now, lately I've been into music creation. So I've always liked
yeah,
music from when I
same.
was a kid. I always I've played guitar, I've been in orchestra, I've done a ton of things.
Mm,
But lately I've tried to create actual music. So I've dedicated a lot of hours from the week to just create
mm,
songs, which I think has just been an escape
nice.
for me. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I take that very seriously. And whenever I can, and I have the opportunity to talk about it via Instagram
Hmm.
or via YouTube, I try to do it because you never know. Maybe a lot of people know about it, but there's this one person that still thinks that, or at least in Colombia, in my culture, it's a very like work your ass off culture. So I'm trying to
Same.
always try to say, hey,
Mm,
relax a little bit. The world is not going to end if you don't respond to that email on Saturday
yeah.
instead of Monday.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Honestly, I've experienced that maybe a year and a half ago, like uh, being too stressed and not taking enough time for myself. And then I kind of took a step back for a little bit. But now I'm honestly, to be honest with you, I'm completely going on the same direction as I went back then. And I'm almost not, I haven't learned my lesson. Something that I do catch myself doing a lot of times. I told you prior to the live stream that I did schedule a lot of videos. So basically, I'm trying to automate as much things. But the thing is that even when I free up my time, I'm just filling up the time with more work. And basically, I think that sometimes me and
Yeah.
a lot of other people have to learn the lesson that work can never be finished. There's always going to be something to do. And then maybe just kind of try to keep it as balanced as possible, which is something that architecture kind of doesn't always allow you to do, but maybe to try and keep it that way as much as possible. And then something else that you obviously mentioned, exercise, which is, I think, a huge, huge thing into kind of keeping you sane in stress times, which
Yeah.
I've been trying to implement more and more of. But um, something else that I'm very curious of is how is life like in Colombia, and how is like the architecture industry there?
Well, the architecture industry is pretty shitty still.
Mm,
So it's not ideal, honestly. We
mhm,
have what we do have is a culture of a lot of competitions. So the way
mm,
like a classic architect would want to go over here is just graduate, create their office, and try to participate in as many competitions as possible because there's a system in place, like a government system that tries to
mhm.
create all the public buildings via competitions, and
Yeah.
there's always like I don't know how many, but there's always a ton of competitions going on throughout the year. So you're always busy with one or the other. So that although that part is really interesting because you get to practice your design skills very quickly and in very different kinds of projects, uh, the the pay gap here in comparison to other places
Mm,
in general is very wide and they it's not a very good pay to be here. And also I think there's still that culture of traditional culture of working as much as you can
mhm.
and being as serious as you can. I think that's like a world general trend, which is also kind of
Yeah.
boring as well. So in terms of what it's like to be an architect here in Colombia, like a former architect,
Mhm,
it's not that ideal. We have like very interesting set of places to design. Like, and it's interesting set of variants. Like, for example, you could be designing a school one day in like in a slope of Medellin over here, and
Mm,
it can be super interesting. And another day you could be like in another kind of geography with another kind of scale. So
yeah.
it's varied and it's interesting,
Hmm.
but it doesn't compensate for
And
like
the
the actual
competitions
work style.
are probably not always fair, right? Because that's at least how it is where I live.
You mean like in terms of corruption, like in terms of like they already have a winner or something, or what do
Well,
you mean?
I cannot say anything like publicly about that, but
Yeah,
but
yeah,
there are instances where there's been scandals here in Kosovo in that sense. But also the other thing is over here there's a huge culture which I honestly do not get, where architects actually charge by square meter, which
yeah.
uh,
It's the same
honestly
here.
it
Yeah,
just messes up the whole market in terms of trying to provide services or anything like that, because
yeah,
it just doesn't make sense. Is that kind of the same thing over there as
yeah.
well?
It's the same. It's the same over here. It's like, yeah, like the worst thing that can happen to an architect is having another architect and having like their own process, because then the people will
Yeah.
just think everyone is just like that. So um,
Hmm.
it's kind of weird, and you know you see it happen in many places around the world. Maybe they don't charge by square meters, but they charge. You know, they have their own set of parameters in which they
Hmm.
charge a client, and that messes with everyone. And even happens between content creators. I don't know if you've had that
Hmm.
situation, but when like that's why we talk with Oliver so much. Like when you have so few companies interested in promoting their software
Hmm.
or whatnot, you try to agree with your competition as much as possible on what are the basic rates that you should have, or if not, you know, then you can lowball the whole industry and everyone can you know lose in general. So I think
Hmm.
that's one of the most important things about, you know, things like this, like uh, talking with other people that want to be content creators, and that's the way it should happen when you have a community of architects within one region to talk between with one another and say, all right, so this is like the basis of what we're doing, and from this we're not stepping down, you know.
Yeah, 100%. Honestly, I didn't think of it that way in terms of having kind of an agreed foundation in terms of pricing with content creation, especially what you seem to have done with Oliver. But that is definitely an interesting point. But yeah, I mean, I think this stuff has to change because it does not only affect the architects. Because honestly, even the like real estate development companies or like the investors, as long as they know that people are going to end up buying the apartments or like whatever kind of building anyway, they do not care who the architect is. They're just trying to find the cheapest price possible. And that's what happens in that sense. Maybe a lot of people that do not live in, maybe people that live like more in like US or UK cannot relate to this stuff. But I think that there's a huge amount of audience that can relate to what we're speaking to right now. So yeah.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I want to firstly thank you for being a part of the podcast. It has been almost an hour right now, and the time has flown by. And I really appreciate you joining. I said it before, and I say it again. Thank you very much for like paving the way for a lot of us in this space, and I look forward to even more collaborations with you. So, thank you.
No, no, thanks for the invitation. I had a really great time, and whenever you know we get the chance to talk with other content creators and have the space where the other people can, you know, just hear you
Mhm.
talk about, you know, architectural life in general is very interesting. So thanks for the invitation. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so see you in the next time.